The candles were already lit inside. I could see them through the front window of my in-laws' house, the warm flicker against the curtains, the shadows of people moving around the dining room, the faint sound of laughter I hadn't been invited to share. I stood on the porch in 30-degree weather with my 4-year-old daughter on my hip and a foil-covered dish going cold in my other hand. My husband, Colt, was still in the car. He'd said he needed a minute to check something on his phone. That was 5 minutes ago. I knocked. My mother-in-law, Diane, opened the door about 4 inches. She looked at me, then at Ivy, then back at me. "Oh," she said, "we actually just sat down." I waited for her to open the door wider. She didn't. "We brought the green bean casserole," I said, "like you asked." "Right." She glanced over her shoulder at the sound of someone laughing inside. "The thing is, we're already at capacity. The Hendersons came with their kids and it's a little crowded in there." Ivy pressed her face into my neck. She did that when she was tired or confused. She was both. I said, "Diane, it's Thanksgiving." "I know what day it is, Layla." She said it the way you say something to a person you're done explaining yourself to. Final. Sealed. And then she smiled, this tight practice smile, and she said, "We'll save you a plate." And she closed the door. I stood there for a second, just 1 second, because that's all I let myself have. Then I turned around, walked back to the car, buckled Ivy into her car seat, got in the passenger side, and said to Colt, "You mother just turned us away at the door." He stared at me. She said we're at capacity. He looked at the house, then at me, then back at the house. And I watched something flicker across his face. Something I'd seen before. This particular shade of helplessness that came over him every time his family did something indefensible. And I knew right then that he was going to let it go. That he was going to say something like, "She's just stressed," or "That's just how she is." And we were going to drive home and I was going to reheat this casserole and pretend the night was fine. I didn't wait for him to say it. "Drive," I said. He drove. Here's what you need to understand about Colt's family. There are 2 kinds of people in it. There's Spencer, Colt's older brother, the golden one, the one who went to Vanderbilt on their parents' dime, the one who married a woman named Tara whose family had a beach house in the Outer Banks, the one who got a down payment gift of $60,000 when they bought their place in Raleigh, and then there's Colt, who went to state school and paid for it himself, who married me, a high school art teacher from a small town in eastern Tennessee, no family money, no beach house, no pedigree, who asked his parents for help with a down payment on a starter home 2 years ago and was told, very gently, that they were in a tight spot right now. We never pushed back. We never asked what the tight spot was. We just figured it out ourselves, the way we always did. I didn't go into this marriage expecting his family to love me. I went in hoping they'd be decent, and for the first couple of years, they were in a surface-level, polite at Easter, ask about your job at Christmas kind of way. But once Ivy was born, something shifted. Like my existence had finally inconvenienced them enough to stop pretending. Diane started making plans that involved Spencer and Tara, but not us. She sent birthday gifts to Spencer's kids, a Nintendo Switch for their 9-year-old, a $200 art kit for their 7-year-old, and sent Ivy a coloring book from the dollar section at Target. Colt noticed. He just didn't say anything. I started saying something around the time Ivy was 2, which went about as well as you'd expect. "You're too sensitive," Diane told me once, at a family dinner I'd foolishly thought was going well. "Spencer and Tara don't make everything into a situation." I was not making everything into a situation. I was pointing out that she planned a family beach trip and somehow forgotten to mention it to us until they were already back. But sure. I stopped saying anything after that. Not because I agreed with her, but because I realized it didn't matter. The math had already been done. I wasn't going to change what I was to them by arguing. I just had to decide what I was going to do with that information. What I did was, I poured everything into my own family. Into Colt, into Ivy, into our little house with the overgrown backyard and the kitchen we were slowly renovating 1 cabinet at a time. I stopped needing his family to validate our life. I thought that was enough. And then came Thanksgiving. Colt didn't talk much on the drive home. Ivy fell asleep in her car seat somewhere around the interstate on ramp, her head listing to the side, her little mouth open. I watched her in the rearview mirror and felt something tighten in my chest. Not for myself, but for her. She didn't understand what had just happened. She just knew she was tired and she hadn't eaten, and the grown-ups were quiet in a way that felt wrong. At home, I put her down in her bed without waking her. I reheated the casserole and we ate it at the kitchen table without saying much. Colt kept looking at his phone. I kept looking at the wall. Finally, I said, "Are you going to call her?" "I don't know what to say." "You could start with why." He set his phone face down on the table. "Layla. She turned your daughter away on Thanksgiving, Colt." "I know." "Your 4-year-old in 30-degree weather." "I know." "And you're sitting here wondering what to say?" He didn't have an answer for that. We finished eating, we cleaned up, we went to bed, and I lay in the dark for a long time listening to him breathe and thinking about the look on Diane's face when she'd said, "We'll save you a plate." Like she was doing me a favor. Like I should have been grateful. I wasn't going to be grateful for that. I wasn't going to be anything for that. My phone buzzed just before midnight. I almost didn't look at it, but something made me reach over and check, and when I saw the name on the screen, I sat straight up in bed. It was Patrice. Colt's grandmother. Colt's grandmother, who lived 40 minutes outside the city, in the same house she'd lived in for 52 years, who called Ivy my heart every time she saw her, who had called me daughter at our wedding before anyone else in that family had even learned to pronounce my last name correctly. The text said, "Layla, are you and my great-grandbaby safe? Call me when you can." I got out of bed and went into the kitchen. I called her back. She picked up on the second ring. "Baby," she said, "tell me what happened." "How did you know something happened?" "Because Diane posted a photo on Facebook of the dinner table and you weren't in it. I called her and she gave me some nonsense about capacity limits and I knew exactly what that meant." I leaned against the kitchen counter. The house was dark and quiet, and outside the window the street was empty, and I suddenly felt very tired in a way that had nothing to do with the hour. "She turned us away at the door," I said. "She didn't even let us in." Patrice didn't say anything for a moment. I could hear her breathing. Then she said, "Was my great-grandbaby with you?" "Yes, ma'am." Another pause. Longer. "Layla," she said, "I need you to do something for me. I need you and Colt and Ivy to come to my house tomorrow morning. Can you do that?" "Of course. Are you okay?" "I'm better than okay," she said. "I just have some things to take care of. Bring Ivy's appetite. I'm making biscuits." I didn't tell Coles about the call until morning. I didn't tell him what Patrice had said exactly, just that she'd called and she wanted us to come. He agreed without much debate, which was unusual. I think he was ashamed. Not of his mother, exactly. Of himself for not doing more. Patrice's house was the kind of house that held memories in its walls. The same floral wallpaper in the front hall that she put up in 1987, a little faded now, but warm. The same smell, biscuits and coffee, and something herbal I'd never been able to identify. Ivy ran straight to her the moment we walked in, and Patrice crouched down to catch her, which was no small thing for an 81-year-old woman with bad knees. "There she is," Patrice murmured. My heart. We ate breakfast, biscuits with butter and jam, scrambled eggs, sliced fruit that Patrice had laid out on a ceramic platter her own grandmother had brought from Georgia. Ivy sat in a booster seat and ate approximately 4 biscuits and talked the whole time about a game she'd been playing, and Patrice listened like it was the most important conversation she'd ever had. Colt and I didn't bring it up. We let Patrice set the pace. After Ivy had been settled in the living room with the basket of toys Patrice kept there specifically for her, Patrice poured herself another cup of coffee, sat down across from us at the kitchen table, and folded her hands. "I've been watching this family for 81 years, she said. "I watched my son raise Diane's husband to be a good man and then watched Diane undo half of that work in 20 years. I've been patient because I believed in family. But patience without accountability isn't virtue. It's just silence." Colt was very still. "I called Spencer this morning," Patrice said. "I told him what his wife did. He said she'd mentioned you were coming, but that things got crowded." She paused. "He didn't say he was sorry." "He won't," I said. "I didn't mean it to come out flat. It just did." Patrice nodded like she'd already known that. "No," she said. "He won't, Because in that house, what Diane does is what Spencer allows. They've been allowed to do a great many things. She reached into the pocket of her cardigan and set a folded piece of paper on the table between us. I had my attorney draft something last week, she said, after the business with the Christmas cards. I glanced at Colt. He looked confused. What Christmas cards? He asked. She sent them, Patrice said, to the whole family. Nice ones, professional photos, Spencer's family on the front, their kids, their dog. She sent them to everyone, including me, and she left you off completely. Like you don't exist. She looked at me. Like you don't exist. She looked at me. Like you don't exist. Like Ivy doesn't exist? I hadn't known about the Christmas cards. Colt hadn't mentioned them. Maybe he hadn't seen them. Maybe he's seen them, and hadn't known how to tell me. I've changed my will, Patrice said simply. The words landed quietly, but they filled the room. This house, she said, which was appraised last year at just over $400,000, was going to be split evenly between Colt's father and his brother's family. That was the original arrangement. She smoothed the paper on the table without unfolding it. It isn't anymore. Colt shook his head slightly. Grandma, you don't have to. I know I don't have to, she said. That's what makes it mean something. She looked at him steadily. The house goes to you and Layla. The contents, the furniture, the silver, the quilts, everything in this house, go to you as well. There's a separate account, a small one, that goes to your father for his needs. Spencer's family receives nothing. Colt made a sound I'd never heard him make before, something between a breath and a word. It's not about punishment, Patrice said. I want you to understand that. I'm not doing this to hurt Spencer or Diane. I'm doing this because this house has been a place of love for 52 years, and I will not leave it to people who don't know what that word means. She looked at me then. Really looked at me. The way she always did. Like she was seeing all of it, not just the surface. You have never once made Colt choose, she said. You have never once said a word to me about what they do to you. I know what that costs. I see you. I had to look down at the table for a second. I focused on the grain of the wood. Grandma, I said when I could speak, what did you tell Spencer? She smiled. It was a small, private smile, the kind that held history in it. I invited them for Sunday dinner, she said. I do that every few months. He said they'd come. Tara's going to bring her sweet potato casserole, which nobody eats, but she brings it every time. She paused. I'm going to tell them then. In person. I think people should hear important things in person. Sunday came. Spencer and Tara arrived with their 2 kids and the sweet potato casserole exactly on time. They were good at being on time. They were good at a lot of things that looked like goodness from a distance, but turned out to be performance once you got close enough. I had not slept well the 2 nights before. I kept thinking about what I wanted to say, or whether I should say anything, or whether Patrice needed me to say anything at all. She didn't. Dinner was pleasant, which somehow made it stranger. Spencer talked about a work trip he'd taken to Dallas. Tara asked me about a school project with her older kid that she wanted advice on, which was actually a normal thing to ask an art teacher, and I answered genuinely, and for about 20 minutes I let myself believe this was just dinner. Then Patrice set down her fork. She didn't clear her throat or wait for a pause. She simply set down her fork, and something about the deliberateness of it made everyone go quiet. I need to tell you all something, she said. I've made some changes to my estate, and it's right that you hear it from me directly. Spencer's expression shifted almost imperceptibly, like a muscle behind his eye twitching. Patrice told them, clearly, calmly, in the same voice she'd used to tell us. The house. The contents. The account for Colt's father. Spencer's share. Nothing. Wait, Spencer said when she finished. You're serious. I'm always serious about legal documents, she said pleasantly. Grandma, he leaned forward, we can talk about this, if there was some kind of misunderstanding. There wasn't. Tara's jaw was tight. She was looking at me. Not at Patrice. At me, like I'd engineered something. Like I'd walked into her grandmother-in-law's kitchen and rewritten a woman's will through some manipulation she couldn't quite name. I looked back at her steadily and said nothing. This is because of Thanksgiving, Spencer said. He said it like a statement, not a question. Thanksgiving was part of it, Patrice said. The Christmas cards were part of it. The years of making Colt and his family feel like afterthoughts were part of it. She folded her hands on the table. It's not any one thing, Spencer. That's the part I need you to understand. It's the whole pattern of it. Layla put you up to this, Tara said. And I thought, there it is. Patrice turned to look at Tara with a patience that was somehow more devastating than anger. Layla, she said, has never said a single word to me about any of this. I called her the night of Thanksgiving. I asked her to come to me. Everything I know because I have been paying attention for 20 years. She paused. I suggest you think carefully before you finish that thought. Tara didn't finish it. Spencer tried a few more angles. He said it wasn't fair. He said he hoped she'd reconsider. He said his kids hadn't done anything wrong, which was true and also not the point. Patrice listened to all of it with the same patient, unreadable expression, and then she said, gently and finally, "You're welcome in my home for as long as I'm in it. That won't change. But the house, when the time comes, goes to Colt and Layla. That also won't change." Spencer left early. He didn't say goodbye to me. Tara said something polite and hollow to Patrice on the way out, and then they were gone, and the house was quiet, and Ivy, who had been playing in the other room through all of it, came wandering into the kitchen with a picture she'd drawn. "I made this for you, Grandma Pat," she said and held it up. It was a drawing of a house with a big orange sun above it, and 3 figures outside, one tall, one medium, one small, and Patrice took it from her with both hands like it was made of something precious. "I'm going to frame this," she said. That was 8 months ago. Patrice is still in her house, still making biscuits on Sunday mornings, still calling Ivy her heart. Her health has been up and down. She had a minor procedure in February, and we drove out to stay with her for a week, and she complained about having too many people fussing over her and then complained when we tried to leave. I think that's what love looks like at 81. Colt and Spencer haven't spoken much. There was one phone call in January that I wasn't part of, that Colt took outside, that lasted about 12 minutes. He came back in and didn't tell me what was said, and I didn't ask. Some things I let him keep. Diane sent a text in December. To Colt, not to me. It said she hoped we could move past what happened, and that the holidays were a stressful time for everyone. Colt showed it to me. I read it once, handed the phone back, and said it was up to him. He didn't respond to it. I don't know what Spencer and Tara tell people about what happened. I don't know what version of the story they carry. That's the thing about other people's narratives. You can't control them, and eventually you have to stop trying. What I can tell you is this. Our daughter asks for Grandma Pat every Sunday. She draws pictures for her. She talks about her the way children talk about people who make them feel completely, unconditionally held. Without ceremony, without qualification. Like it's simply the most natural thing in the world. That's the inheritance that matters, not the house, not the silver, not the number on the appraisal document. The part where my daughter grows up knowing what real love looks like, knowing the difference between family that performs and family that shows up. She's 4. She doesn't have words for any of that yet. But I think, somewhere in her small understanding of the world, she already knows. That's the part I'll make sure she never forgets. I've thought a lot about what Patrice said that night on the phone, not the part about the will, or the house, or any of it, but the part where she said, patience without accountability isn't virtue. It's just silence. I've turned that over in my mind more times than I can count, because for years, silence was the thing I chose, not because I was weak, because I thought it was the right thing to do. I thought if I stayed quiet long enough, kept my head down, didn't make waves, the people around me would eventually see what was there. That's not how it works. What I know now is that the way we carry ourselves over time, the choices we make when nobody's watching, the integrity we hold on to even when it costs us something, that's not invisible. It accumulates. Patrice had been watching for 20 years, and she saw all of it. Every holiday I showed up to anyway, every slight I absorbed without weaponizing it, every time I chose Colt and Ivy over my own pride, she saw it because she was the kind of person who pays attention, who measures people not by what they say about themselves but by what they do when it's inconvenient. That's what I want Ivy to grow up understanding. Not that life is fair, because it isn't, and I won't lie to her about that, but that the way you move through unfairness matters. Diane closed a door in my face on Thanksgiving and thought she was winning something. What she was actually doing was writing a record. Every small cruelty writes a record. Every time you exclude someone to make yourself feel bigger, every time you let your child carry the weight of your pettiness, every time you choose performance over substance, it goes somewhere. It doesn't evaporate, it lands, and it stays. I'm not saying this to be self-righteous. I made plenty of mistakes in those years. There were nights I said things to Colt that came from pure frustration, nights I wasn't the patient, measured person I wanted to be. What I tried to hold on to, even in those moments, was the discipline to keep showing up, to not let their behavior become an excuse for mine. That took more effort than anything else. It would have been so easy to match their energy, to make scenes, to keep score out loud, to let Ivy witness me falling apart over people who weren't worth it. I chose not to, not because I'm saintly, but because I understood, even then, that the person I was becoming and how I handled this would matter more to my daughter than any outcome. And then Patrice, 81 years old, bad knees, biscuits on Sunday mornings, paying attention the whole time. The thing about people with real wisdom is that they don't announce it. They just act from it, clearly and without drama, and you feel the weight of it afterward. She didn't call me to ask what had happened. She already knew. She called because she'd made a decision and she wanted me to know I wasn't invisible. Ivy is 4. She can't articulate any of this yet, but she knows Grandma Pat's house feels safe. She runs there. She draws pictures for her. In her small understanding of the world, she is already learning what love that doesn't come with conditions feels like, and because she knows that, she will be able to recognize the difference for the rest of her life. That might be the most important thing anyone has ever given her. What happened to us wasn't luck. It wasn't fate. It was the long, quiet result of choices made every day over years. The choice to stay decent when decency wasn't rewarded, to stay present when it would have been easier to disappear, to protect a 4-year-old's understanding of the world even when the adults around us were failing that test completely. That's what came back to us. Not immediately, not dramatically, just steadily, the way real things tend to.